So, yeah, I was watching a BGS video, his Black Pill talk about 50-50 relationships. And all I got to say is, we ain't tricking with money no more. Bitch, I got a room. What that pussy, how much that pussy costs now. Hey, I swear to God, BGS be making these videos, and I be like, oh shit, hey, I ain't paying cash no more. Fuck that. I'm tricking with rooms, man. Hey, man. So, real quick, wanted to make a video about defining your demons. Come on. Ooh, what is this? Okay, that's why. About defining your demons. Talking with a mentee the other day, and really smart guy, ambitious brother, brother named Elijah, and I said his government, I shouldn't have said that, but yeah, talking with this brother E, you know, it was a good conversation, having a good conversation with him in terms of, like, you know, showing him a couple things, pointers, and giving him direction. I mean, because he just, and that's sometimes what it is that people don't have a direction when it comes to IT, or when it comes to working in a certain industry, or just in life in general. And that's kind of what we all need to try and help provide other people, is direction in some way, shape, or form. But he brought it up. He was like, man, that's a really good term. Talking about defining your demons. The conversation was mainly on coding, because sometimes what it is, and it was a little bit inspired by the manosphere, the black manosphere in the space, and some of the videos that I do in the space. But one of the things we talked about with defining your demons is that it's not too hard to explain certain problems in some cases, but you know, it's really hard when you don't have the right words to explain it. Like, okay, I'm having this problem where it sucks that I have to do a whole bunch of if statements to find out if a certain property exists within an object, like a JSON object. I have to do if this property exists, then check for if this property exists, then check for if this property exists, blah, blah, blah. And then that gets into like a nested if hell or something like that. So you're doing a whole bunch of if statements and you're having to deal with this. So it kind of really sucks. But then there's, I don't know who the hell that was. But that kind of sucks, because it's like, okay, now you have to deal with the fact that you have a whole bunch more lines of code and stuff like that. But you can actually get away with something like, or you can actually do what they call optional chaining. Now, I thought it was something like nullish coalescing or something like that, but that's something different. But it's called optional chaining. So you can actually just have like a question mark, period, and then the next object. And then essentially that should evaluate to true if the object that you want exists all the way down the chain. So you don't have all these multiple lines of code. You have just this one line of code, or one bit, a cleaner, a conditional, if you will. So look up optional chaining, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And hopefully it's just the right word. But the biggest thing, or the point of all this, was not the tricking with a room, or the if statement hell, or nested if statements. The biggest thing is defining your demons, defining what you're seeing on the ground on a day-to-day basis with male and female relationships, how men act, how women act. We focus mainly on the women, so the men can actually do better and understand and recognize what's really going on in their life, right? And with defining, like, the importance of defining your demons, and then actually having words, like, now these words are so, and I made a video a while back called dilution of terms, and a lot of these meanings and it's a lot of the stats that a lot of people use, regurgitate, or that they take as how would you say, as gospel, if you will. Your 80-20 rules, your hypergamy, also, what was the other one where you're hybristophilia, and some of the other things that you would get out of, like, say, like, I think it's brief. No, I won't even name the person. Briefolt's law is like 80-20, but I think Briefolt actually came up with some of the terms like hypergamy, hybristophilia. Don't quote me on that because I'm probably wrong. But anyways, moving on. But having these terms, now we're bringing this stuff into the lexicon, and then we have other terms that define our particular issues or problems. Give me a sec. Let me put a shirt on here. Our particular issues and concerns that we have on our day-to-day basis, right? And a lot of people are taking these terms for granted. But the importance of these terms is mainly the fact that now, when we're talking about these things, other people understand it. And not just understand it, but then they can actually expand on these definitions, expand on these concepts, and then dig even deeper, dig even further. Because now we've already defeated level 1. We understand that we're reclaiming choice, we're reclaiming emotion, and we're doing all these other things, right? Like I've talked about in previous videos. Now we're starting to look at, okay, this is a problem with the social contract. Okay, that's already been fleshed out, right? Now we're working on the other parts to actually make a whole body of work where people can come in and they have, in a sense, lexicons, they have dictionaries, a lot of the terms that Ed will come up on the fly or the chat will come up with, such as dice and all this other stuff. Now people have like a better understanding of what's going on. And we have terms, sometimes are silly terms, but then these terms have real serious meaning. Right? Like we talk about them and we make fun of them in some cases, especially like with Ed and him talking about dice or FTDs, financially transmitted diseases. Me talking about something like gig relationships. That's the best way I can define it. I'm sure there's other ways of defining it. And now we can look at it as like, okay, I know gig economy and I know how that works. Applying it to relationships. Now we're looking at it with through a whole different lens. And now we're saying things like, oh, that's why it's always this back and forth. You're always finding somebody new. You're never with anybody long term. You don't have that retirement package or anything else like that. And this is like, when you define these demons, so to speak, then you could really, and this whole phrase, if you will, is based out of like, Exorcism and Constantine, or the Exorcist movies and Constantine. The only way you can actually expel a demon or exorcise a demon out of a person is by first knowing its name. Once you know its name, then you can actually use its name in an incantation to actually get rid of said demon. And a lot of people don't know these demons. A lot of people don't know hypergamy. A lot of people don't know twin mating strategy. The black or the light version of cuckoldry in terms of like, your relationships. Like she always has somebody else, dick appointments. You're nothing but, pizza saved in her phone, or Wednesday night meals, or what have you. Like, although these terms kind of make fun of some of the things that, people, the situations people find themselves in, they also define or, properly define and help us better understand the situations. Because now it becomes a part of the, in a sense, vernacular, right? Now we're looking at it and we're like, whoa, okay, so this is an issue that other people are experiencing, and this is how they this is the terminology they use, and they have definitions associated with it that say, oh, okay, these are the criteria for you to actually be considered X, Y, and Z. Like, for me, I always talk about 3 ways of spending money on a woman, right? I usually talk about 2 of them, which are well known, and then a third one that's also well known, but it's not always like said. You always have simping and tricking, right? But I don't talk about simping mostly. I talk about tricking and investing. And then most people talk about simping and tricking. So my thing is, simping is paying for something and you're not getting anything out of it. Like, there's a difference between a slut, a whore, and a hoe or something like that. So for instance, a slut is a person that gives away sexual access and they don't control their own sexual access. A whore is a person that charges for their sexual access. Or a whore is a person that charges for their sexual access. A hoe is a person that doesn't charge enough for their sexual access. Like, if I was to define it, that's how I look at it. Like when you talk about hoes and thoughts and stuff like that, that's somebody that's out here giving up the box for little and nothing, or less than, like, next to nothing. But, they don't really have a set price. And their price might be, Ed's terms, genetic currency or something like that. And And shout out to the brother that actually came up with the term dice. I forgot his name, but, you know, Ed always shouts him out. Anyways. But, you know, when I talk about, like, simping is when you're paying money, but you're not really getting what you want in return. So, an example would be you're taking this woman out on dates, trips, and all types of other stuff. And maybe you're getting the sex, but you're not getting the relationship that you want out of her. You know, like that to me is simping, because you're not getting what you want. She's not reciprocating, right? You don't feel satisfied, even though you got the nut off. Great, you can get the nut off on any chick. You already have a stable and all this other shit, but you're like, man, I want to be with this woman and see where it can go. And she's like, no, you're zaddy. I'm gonna give you the pussy, and you should be glad with that. And some guys are just not, you know, like they can get pussy anywhere. They want more. Then you have a trick. What some of the stuff I'll do is like tricking. It's like, all right, cool. You pay for pussy, you get the pussy, and you go, right? You don't want anything else, or you don't want anything else. It's sexual. It's transactional, right? Then you have investing. Okay, cool. I'm actually paying for dates, maybe paying for trips, but I'm actually doing this because this is a long-term thing for me. And this person is also reciprocating that with me. And this might turn into something where, you know, you're going to mate with this person and maybe go ahead and have a long-term relationship with them. Me, of course, I'm going to try and do the contract stuff when it comes to, like, you know, some type of union or something like that. Not like, you know, actual marriage, right? So that's investing. But we have to define, but as you heard, like, for all those different things between slut, whore, hoe, simp, trick, investing, like, I have definitions for them. I can actually define and talk about these things and saying, hey, I'm investing in this woman. I expect more out of her, that more than sexual. Sexual is the least. I can get that from anywhere else, right? So these are the things. So defining your demons is very important. Defining your demons when it comes to coding and programming and understanding the things that you're actually talking about so that you can actually explain it to somebody, and then that other person can take that in, digest it, and then possibly regurgitate or come up with something. You know, they take your output and then they actually give you another output after processing it, right? You know, your input output. So also look up that one. There's one sage programmer known as Uncle Ben, I believe, and he talks about the internet as a big input-output machine, and that's a pretty interesting conversation in terms of you put in, you put in data and then it outputs your web page or results or what have you, or API response or REST response or something like that. So I think that's pretty important. I wanted to talk about that. Brother E told me. Brother E said, man, that's a pretty good idea. And he actually watches videos. And I told him, hey, listen, man, you in this space, man, don't go crazy. Don't get too deep in this, man. But it's good that, other brothers are coming into this space and then they can see some of this stuff and we can help, in a sense, reprogram them and their mind so that they can actually get what they want out of relationships, situations, and everyday interactions with people. All right, with that being said, as always, love you all. I really do mean that, and I wish you all the best. Peace.